Most people don't lose their integrity all at once. They lose it at threshold, in an argument, in a moment of urgency, in a room where everyone else is saying yes. Pressure doesn't destroy character, it reveals what governs it. I'm Kay McLeod, and this is Integrity Under Pressure, a podcast about self governance, consequence literacy, and how to protect your integrity when willpower isn't enough. Because integrity isn't a personality trait, it's a governance skill. You don't make bad decisions on purpose. You make them with really good explanations, clear logic, strong reasoning, convincing stories. And by the time you act, it doesn't feel like a mistake, it feels justified. This is not about the story your mind tells, this is about the moment that story becomes permission. Because there is a category of failure that does not look like failure when it is happening. It looks like intelligence. It sounds like logic. It presents as maturity. And that is why it is dangerous. Because smart people do not avoid bad decisions, they justify them faster. Not because they are careless, because they are skilled at making meaning. And meaning, when left ungoverned, becomes permission. Most people think the dangerous moment is the reaction, the message, the purchase, the lie, the decision. But the real danger happens before that. It is the moment the reaction starts to sound reasonable. It is the moment you begin building a case, not for what is right, for what you want. That is the engine, and it does not show up as chaos. It shows up as a calm, articulate voice inside you saying, "This is different. I deserve this. Anyone would do the same." You can be composed, you can be thoughtful, you can sound grounded, and still be in the middle of integrity collapse, quietly, cleanly, with excellent reasoning. That is what makes this difficult to detect because this is not urgency. It is not pressure. Pressure can be loud, urgency can push. Rationalization is quiet, it persuades. It is the moment where the inner judge is replaced by an inner defense attorney, and the jury is you. I have seen this pattern repeat across contexts. Not bad people making bad decisions. People talking themselves into becoming someone they never intended to be. One sentence at a time. You have heard it. It is not a big deal. Just this once. Given everything I'm carrying, I am justified. It does not sound like dishonesty. It sounds like context. And context can be true, but it can also be weaponized. You can use truth to justify the wrong move. That is where the collapse happens quietly. And if you want to understand how people end up in situations they cannot explain later, this is the mechanism. It is the same mechanism behind that jail story, not the action, the reasoning. The moment the mind rewrote the rules, where something unthinkable became necessary. It did not feel reckless, it felt logical. It felt like survival. And that is why this matters, because the work is not to feel less. The work is to govern what becomes reasonable. Because once something feels reasonable, you will do it, and you will defend it, and you will repeat it. Here is the uncomfortable truth: you do not rationalize what you do not want. You rationalize what you already want to do. Rationalization is not desire, it is permission. So you do not fix this by removing temptation. You fix it by becoming suspicious. Suspicious of your own reasoning at the exact moment it becomes fluent. When your mind gets sharp, when your explanations sound clean, when you start agreeing with yourself too easily, that is the moment to pause. Not because something is wrong with you, because your system is doing exactly what it is designed to do: reduce discomfort, protect identity, maintain internal coherence. Now, let's make this precise. There is a concept called cognitive dissonance. It is the tension you feel when your behavior and your self image do not match. You see yourself as honest, but you're about to lie. You see yourself as disciplined, but you're about to compromise. That tension is real, and your system does not like holding it. So it has two options: change the behavior or change the story. Most people change the story. That is the engine of rationalization. Once you move toward a behavior that conflicts with your standards, your mind begins building a narrative to protect you. It reframes, it edits, it selects evidence, it shifts language, and suddenly it feels acceptable, like an exception. Then another exception. And over time, the exceptions become the pattern, and the pattern becomes identity. This is why intelligence is not protection, it is a tool. It can sharpen truth, or it can cut a hole in your standards and call it sophistication. Here's the part people miss: rationalization comes from relief. You feel better once you explain it. The tension drops, the resistance softens, and you interpret that relief as correctness. You think now it makes sense. But relief is not truth. Relief is often just conflict disappearing. That is not clarity, that is anesthesia. And anesthesia has a cause. So let's make this real. I deserve this. Maybe you do. But that is not a moral argument. That is a feeling that if you use that feeling to override your standards, you are training yourself to be negotiable. This is different. That one is dangerous because your system recognizes there is a standard. So it creates a loophole. The question is not whether it is different. The question is how. Is it ethically different or just emotionally different? Because emotions change quickly. Standards should not. Anyone would do this. Nope. There is no anyone. There is you. And you are building a specific identity through repeated decisions. So the real question becomes, do I want to be the kind of person who does this under these conditions? That is responsibility. They pushed me, they started it. Maybe. But pain is not permission. What matters is what you become in response. Because every decision is a vote for who you are or who you are becoming. Identity is not fixed, it is reinforced or negotiated away. And that is why The moment before the decision matters most because you are not just choosing an action, you are choosing a direction. Now go back to that earlier moment. The collapse did not feel like collapse, it felt like reasoning, a narrative that made the action feel appropriate. That is the shift, not the behavior. The permission. And that permission did not come from outside, it came from inside. Fear made the case, intelligence supported it, and the system approved it. That is the pattern, not pressure, defense. So the question becomes, how fast do you start justifying? Because that is the moment to catch, not after, before. And this does not only happen in extreme situations, it happens in small daily moments. I did not tell them because it would upset them. Sometimes that is care, sometimes that is control. I'm protecting my peace. Sometimes that is healthy, sometimes that is avoidance. I'm just being honest. Sometimes that is truth. Sometimes that is aggression disguised as virtue. I'm setting a boundary. Sometimes that is clarity. Sometimes that is punishment. The phrase is not the issue, the function is. Is it clarifying truth or is it laundering behavior? So here is the cleanest question you can ask yourself. Would I make this argument if I did not already want the outcome? If the answer is no, you are not reasoning, you are rationalizing. Another question: who benefits from me believing this? Because someone always benefits. Sometimes it is you, sometimes it is the version of you avoiding discomfort. Now, the consequences, they do not explode, they accumulate. First, internally, a subtle loss of self respect, not loud, just a quiet misalignment. Then, relationally, you become evasive, defensive, inconsistent. People feel it. Then, identity. You stop trusting yourself because you have seen how easily you can convince yourself. Then, instability. You swing, you overreact, you lose center. And it all started with a sentence, a reasonable sentence. The line separating good and evil runs through every human heart, not out there, in here. And rationalization is how that line blurs, not in theory, in decisions. So here is a simple moment. You're tired, someone disappoints you, you feel the surge, and the thought appears: I'm not being harsh, I'm being clear. Maybe. Or maybe you are discharging discomfort. And if you act on it, you will feel relief. And you will call that relief power. And then wonder why things feel colder afterward. That is the cost. Same with money. I need this. This will change things. Maybe. Or maybe you are buying relief. And later, you will feel the weight, not just financially, internally. So, what is the move? Catch the moment your mind starts building the case. Not after the decision, during the reasoning, when the argument sounds clean. Pause and ask better questions. What do I actually want? Who am I becoming if I choose this? Because sovereignty is not control over life, it is control over what you allow to become reasonable, what you normalize, what you permit. Because what becomes normal becomes you. So here is the final question: what is the sentence you keep using to make your next compromise feel justified? And what does it cost you every time you believe it? If this episode did anything, let it be this. You saw the pattern. Pressure is not the problem. The question is whether you govern yourself inside it. Hold that and decide what you're no longer willing to do on autopilot. Because integrity isn't a personality trait, it's a governance skill. I'll see you on the next episode.